January 16th. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Coyne?
Here.
Commissioner Grau?
Here.
Commissioner Leduc?
Here.
Commissioner Leach?
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Here.
Commissioner Tunnell?
Here.
Commissioner Harrington?
Does anyone have any amendments, additions, or deletions to add to the current agenda? Seeing none, we have no public here. We will move on to the bond issue notification public hearing. The Park Board will now hold a public hearing to receive comments on the intent of the Board of Park Commissioners to sell not to exceed $1,550,000 general obligation limited tax bonds for the payment of land condemned or purchased for parks, for the building, maintaining, improving, and protecting of the same and the existing land and facilities of the district, and for the payment of the expenses incident thereto. All persons desiring to be heard will have an opportunity to present written or oral testimony with respect thereto. Are there any written or oral comments from the commissioners? Hearing none. Are there any written or oral comments from the public? Hearing none. Are there any additional comments from the public? May I have a motion to finally adjourn the public hearing?
I move to finally adjourn the public hearing of the Board of Park Commissioners. Any discussion? Please call a roll.
Commissioner Coyne?
Yes.
Commissioner Grau?
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc?
Yes.
Commissioner Leach?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington?
I declare the public hearing finally adjourned. We'll move on to approval of minutes. I move to approve the regular board and public hearing meeting minutes of Thursday, December 19th, 2019.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just one. Under report of park officials, appointment of commissioners, Commissioner Tunnell's last name is spelled incorrectly.
All right. Anything else? All right, can we,
Is that a voice vote?
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? All right, the motion passes. Report of park officials. I am not the president. I do not have anything to say, other than good job last night.
Thank you.
It was a good turnout.
Good meeting.
We're moving forward. All right, a report from the attorney. All right, I'm glad. Executive Director, Gail.
I just, two things regarding last night. Thank you to all the commissioners for being there. And I thought it was a great start and very wonderful group of, just all different sections of the community. So I think we're going to really get a good result. From here, we will be setting up the tours that we talked about last night. And we're looking at the last week of January. So we'll be sending that out to the group probably tomorrow or Monday, just to thank them for coming, thank them for being a part of this. And we'll do an evening and a daytime tour. We are, gathering answers to the questions we received last night. So what we'll do is we'll get all the answers to whatever we've gotten and send it to the whole group. So everybody gets those, and so we'll include the commissioners in that. We'll include the task force as well, but I don't know, all the commissioners, we'll probably just include everybody, in those answers, keep everybody informed. And then we're working on the Q&A, and then we'll start working on what's going to happen at the second meeting. And then we're also scheduling ourselves, trying to look at all the community meetings and, what the schedules are for those, because we're going out to talk to all the groups. So if you have anybody, I know you're all involved in groups, if there's anyone that, you think that you may want to come talk to, Chamber Board, I'm looking at you, or, several things going on at that conference, and we've got our new senator and state rep. We've got Mertwick and Stevens sitting with us at lunch, so that's great because we've not met them yet. So that'll be a great time to sit with them and meet them. And we are also getting a reward next week for the best use of the Take Time for Fun or use license plate. Yes. So we're going to be getting that Saturday at the annual IEPD meeting. So a lot going on at the conference next week. So
Great.
be happy to answer any questions.
When did you say community meetings? When would we want to start scheduling those? To
After-
talk to,
Yes, after the second meeting.
which is
correct? So
February.
February, March, or March, April? March, April.
Okay.
So we're focusing on.
Mainly March.
What'd you say?
We're gonna try to hit them mainly in March.
March,
but we
yeah.
Go a little February.
Right, because then, we'll be bringing that feedback back to that May meeting. And that's when, the group will be deciding what they're gonna, they're gonna push it forward to the board, what the recommendation will be to the board. So, yeah. March, April.
I just wanted to say, I know there was a lot of work that went into last night, so you guys did an awesome job, especially with all the name tags and the books and all the presentations were seamless. So you guys definitely brought the A game last night. So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you
Margaret
for
and Marianne did all the binders and the, all
amazing
the
work.
prep for it, but, yeah, the staff, I think, did a great job. Yeah, we did a lot of prepping and a lot of rehearsing, but I think it,
You guys did great.
thank you. Appreciate the
Second.
feedback.
Third.
Thank you.
0. All right. And then the contributions were in your report?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I forgot about that. So, that's a policy to bring to the board, all the organizations that request from us donations throughout the year, and that list is there for you to see. There doesn't require any action, unless you have any questions.
What page is it on, Gail?
Well,
I apologize, but there's no page numbers in this board packet.
After 6.
My fault.
After 6.
It's after the
Perfect.
minutes.
Found it. Thank you.
There's some page numbers.
Yeah, that one doesn't have a page.
yes. Parkridge Newcomers, Boy Scout Troop 24, Mary C. DeWiston, St. Andrews Lutheran School. Did you find it? Do you want me to read through them? Messiah Lutheran Child Care Center, Parkridge Fine Arts Society, McCaff, Maine South Parents Scholarship Club. And those are passes, to the facilities.
Cool.
And then marketing and public relations and human resources, again, I'd be happy to answer any questions on those two reports.
Any questions? All right, we'll turn it over to you, Commissioner Leduc. She's like, oh no.
Yay. All right, so for finance, I'll turn it over to Superintendent DeAngelis.
Thank you. So I just have a couple highlights I want to point out on my written report. It comes after the human resources report. We did receive a distribution from IMET's liquidating trust of about $200,000. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that. I did reach out to their executive director, and I think we may receive yet another smaller distribution. So that is a somewhat, we weren't expecting to receive it at this point. We were always hopeful that we would have some more recovery. So I think that that's pretty good news. Also, when we get to the report by funds, I'm happy to report that when we published the budget, we were estimating that our operating surplus would be around $350,000 when we had budgeted around $250,000, and based on my estimates at this point, I feel like we're going to do a couple hundred thousand dollars better than that. So the current estimate for the surplus is up around 550,000, and there's still a lot of moving parts, but I was comfortable being able to make that estimate at this point. So I feel like,
But that check figures into that, right?
well, that check is figures into our cash balance. So when we look at the cash projection and where we are compared to budget, it affects the positive variance. But I think for our fund balance, because it was recorded as a receivable, that you're not really going to see it in as part of that. I think it's really that we had stronger operating performance than budgeted. Yeah. One other point I would like to add, we had the bond hearing. So I did not include in my report, but the bids for those bonds would be going out tomorrow, and they are due on February 4th. So I believe it's the next board meeting when we will look at the sale.
Great. Any comments? Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you. Going back to this 220,000.
Mm-hmm.
So is this reflected in this cash balance up here, or did this happen in January?
It is reflected in this cash
In the
balance.
ending
Yes.
cash balance.
Yes.
But it doesn't show up as, it's not another receipt on the grants line or other,
No.
it's not.
No, because it's not revenue. It is just reducing our receivable.
Is there a reserve against that receivable? Reserve for uncollectibles?
There is, and I'd have to look into what that was.
So based on this, you might make an adjustment to that up or down?
After I'll
Once you get a better handle on what's going on?
yeah, and I will ask our auditors their recommendation.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments or questions? All right, moving on. Is there anything?
So for the report by funds, I would just point out the last page. Of these reports, the operating fund is where you really see the current net surplus is about 1.3 million compared to about a million. Oh, I'm sorry, compared to where we ended the year, 300,000 last year. But what I did was look at where we are today compared to what this report looked like at this time last year. And it was, I think we had around 700 surplus. So we're doing better than we were last year, which is good news.
Is that page 5?
Yes.
Can you show me what you're saying?
Toward the bottom, the net surplus line.
That's 1 point.
One.
She's comparing this to this,
Oh.
which is a big number, but she's saying every year that it looks like that,
Right.
but she's saying it's, even considering what happened last year, she thinks she's
Right. Last year at this time, our surplus position was around 700,000. And then we ended after all the accruals, and our final position was 306.
Oh, so that, right, that was closed out. You don't have the
Comparing all the-
uncorrect.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
Out the bills,
so that's why I'm saying around 550, even though it's showing 1.3. I'm comfortable with that number. Okay?
Any other commissioner comments or questions? All right, moving on to the voucher list. I move to approve for payment vouchers in the total amount of $587,331.09. Any Superintendent DeAngelis, any comments on it, or?
No.
Any commissioner comments or questions? All right, call the vote.
Commissioner Grau,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnel,
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrington.
All right. So with that passing, now I move on to the approval of contracts with PMA Securities. I move to approve the financial advisory agreement with PMA Securities as presented and to authorize the executive director to execute and deliver the agreement.
Second.
Superintendent DeAngelis, any comments?
I did prepare a memo explaining these contracts in the board packet. If you haven't had a chance to read it, basically the dollar amounts are below the executive director's threshold. However, based on advice of counsel, we really want the board, to be aware of every step in the process of issuing the bonds, and contracting with the financial advisors is one of those steps because of the disclosure that is required, and that what they are required to disclose. It's important that the board is aware of these relationships. So that's why we're asking you to approve these contracts.
Any commissioner comments or questions? Commissioner O'Donnell?
This doesn't directly have to do with the approval of this agreement, but do you know at this point, have they decided whether they're going to do a private placement or a sale?
Yes, the bids will be sent out as a private placement.
Private placement.
Any other commissioner comments or questions? Commissioner Leach?
What was the rationale on the private versus public?
Because of the smaller size and the shorter tenor than most public issues, it's felt like the market and the bids would be better from a private placement.
Any other commissioner comments or questions? Seeing none, call the vote.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnel,
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne,
Aye.
Commissioner Grau,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington.
All right, with that passing, I now move to approve the dissemination agent agreement with PMA Securities as presented and to authorize the executive director to execute and deliver the agreement.
Second.
Superintendent DeAngelis, any comments?
No.
Any commissioners have any comments or questions? Seeing none, call the vote.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnel,
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne,
Aye.
Commissioner Grau,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington.
All right, and with that, I pass it on to Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Commissioner Leduc. And I yield the floor to Superintendent Armour.
Thank you. I'll just give a few highlights from the written report. The first page highlights our New Year's Eve event, which is always very grand and a family fun event. And as you can see by the photos, very well attended. The first page also, I liked at the end of every year to highlight our customer experience committee. It has just a few snippet of a few things that we do throughout the year. And it's a great team who works throughout the district on both internal and external customer service. And as you can see, we trained 332 employees in person, and if they weren't at the trainings, then they would be, the information would be reviewed by their individual supervisor. So that's going over our expectations and talking about customer service excellence. And then ended the year strong with a customer appreciation day at all of our facilities for our customers. A few other things that stood out to me in this report is that the Wildwood program saw a really big jump this December. They did have a lot of new programs, and also just we had full 3 weeks of programming in December just with the way the calendar fell. So a little bit of both there, but they're definitely
500. A little jump, 500. I thought it was a typo.
No. And then also our private swim lessons ended very strong compared to last year. They back up. But besides that, a lot of great things happening to end the year, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about the report.
Anybody have questions for Superintendent Armour?
Okay.
No,
Oh,
I have
okay.
some.
Sure.
Anybody else before I go? Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to call you. Just a couple. I wanted to talk just for a minute about the fitness center.
Sure.
So the numbers, it looks like maybe, I mean, just looking at the numbers, that maybe the hemorrhaging has stopped. What's your feeling about that? What are you and Amy talking about?
Well, we've, over the past year, I know I've talked about the marketing initiatives we've had with the aquatics and the fitness center, and we've been out and about, and we did change just in August to have all one fee. So we've had definitely some response to that. November was very strong. December was busy, and I just talked to Amy a few hours ago, and January is starting out very strong as well. And there were some big fee increases at another fitness center that's bringing people back to us. So we're feeling good, and we're also rolling out the new spin program the end of February and beginning of March. So based on some of the other facilities that have had that, they've definitely seen growth because of that program.
Can you tell us more about the new spin program?
It was we talked about it at the last meeting when it was approved. It was, it's an interactive software.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
To go with the new bikes that we authorized.
So everyone's getting trained in February. There's going to be a couple free classes like we always do, and instructors are very excited about it, and the staff.
Right.
Yeah, just to add to that, because I've been talking to Amy about that, and I guess they did that in Glenview, and she's been going there, and she's really jazzed about it. So we'll see.
Are you going to do it?
Oh yeah,
Of course.
I can give a report if you'd like when the time comes.
We'll put it on the agenda.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Superintendent Armour? Okay. Seeing none, we can move on. Next.
You. Aquatics.
Want me to kick it off?
Yes.
I'd like to welcome Aquatics Manager Ethan William. He prepared the report that you have in your board packet. He's going to give a brief presentation, and we'll both answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, no better time to talk about pools than when it's 15 degrees out and everyone's still bundled up in their coats inside. So, 2019, we had a little bit of a challenge with our initial weather leading into the summer. April and May are very important for our initial pass sales. And in looking at comparable weather data, we were about 8 degrees less this year as compared to 2018. We had about 400 more preseason pass sales. So, the weather definitely affected us a little bit there. We try our best to keep our pools open, even though we have some poor weather. But this past summer, we definitely hit a little bit of a roadblock with it, where we had about 64 total closures. Now that's with partial closures, full closures during the daytime, and even if we do close, a pool, we try our best to open it up again. If it's in the morning, opening up again in the evening. An example is Centennial. If we close during the day, we try our best to open up at least for the 5 to 7 for adult lap swim, because those people are dedicated and they will swim in 40-degree weather. So we try our best to at least staff that 5 to 7 and still give people a little bit of an ability to swim. On top of pool closings, our rentals, we saw a dip in that due to our lower temperatures leading into the season. We had to reschedule 5 parties in June to later on in the summer, which is great, but now we can't additionally book 5 more parties. So there's a trickle effect that happens if we reschedule and move people. It's great, we keep that revenue, but now we're out another 5 parties. So we try our best to accommodate everybody. We did have one party where we had to completely cancel it all. outdoor swim lessons, we saw those numbers, dip a little bit. We really think that is, another, weather affecting that. We had to issue $5,600 in refunds, and primarily those are weather-related refunds. So, as much as we try to accommodate everybody, the pool's nice and warm, but once a kid gets out of the pool and they, parents see the blue lips, that's that's a little cool. So, we have done what we could to move some of the younger kids' lessons if we are canceling stuff inside to the fitness center if possible, as long as we don't have other programs going on at that time. Our Riptide swim team program is very strong. We had 70 children enrolled in that. We're using both pools in order to get practice time in, so that's a very popular program as well. Our staffing, 205 total part-time and seasonal staff were hired this summer. We really do a lot to train them, especially with our lifeguard training. Our initial training for lifeguards and managers are 24 hours on top of individual facility trainings when we do our paperwork and HR orientation, PNRMA training. And then if they want to teach swim lessons, they have to get trained on that too. So, and then throughout the summer, they have to do 4 hours of in-service training every single month. So on top of their initial training or their recertification, they're continually trained throughout the summer. This summer, we saw our transition from paperwork to digital. Camp did that 2 years ago. We did it last year. And it really had myself and then our aquatic supervisor, Olivia Kovac, work with Diane and Patty in the HR department, Sandra and Hernandez in our payroll department to get everybody in with digital I-9s and all the online paperwork. And I think that really helped in kind of streamlining our hiring process. And, so far, it seems to be working pretty well for us, and it actually makes kids use Paycom a lot more. So that's always helpful too. Facility reviews, overall, they're generally positive. People do like the facilities that we have, and it's a wide range. Young, moms and dads bringing their 2, 3, 4-year-olds over to the splash pad. I know I bring my kids to the splash pad; they absolutely love it. To South Park and Centennial and up to Hinckley, where we serve a lot of our senior population. Couple of the common comments we got in our facility evaluations were cleanliness and needing more deck chairs. I think we all know about deck chairs. We have added more money in the budget for our deck chairs, and what I think our maintenance staff is doing is if there is a broken chair, they're not just tossing it. If it's, bunches of broken straps, there's not a whole lot we can do to fix it. But some of the other common things that break on it are the screws and the washers. So they're taking those parts so we can fix other chairs where those break. So we're not just trashing chairs. We're repurposing other parts of broken chairs that we can't use. So we're able to keep, having enough chairs. We increased our budget on that for an additional $1,300 for more deck chairs over at Centennial this upcoming year. And then, once again, we do our best to try and keep all of our facilities as clean as possible. We worked really, really hard with our park staff on getting a schedule of getting into our locker rooms, especially the women's locker room during the summer, especially at Centennial, to make sure we get cleaning going on throughout the season, because we want to make sure that people go in there and it's a clean environment. So we worked really hard with Terry's staff on making sure that we have a good collaborative effort.
Can I interrupt there?
Yeah.
They always say our locker rooms look dirty. That's always our lowest score. Is there anything that can be done, or is it just that feeling when you go in a locker room, you always just feel like, oh, is it clean?
I think actually we are addressing it with some of the capital money that we put into. The floors are already been ground down. Contractors are in this week right now. The new partitions are going to go up, which I think will help a lot because the old partitions were rusting out. And then I had a phone call this afternoon with engineers about working through the plumbing part. So we're going to be updating the plumbing and for the showers. So we're looking at a couple of different things that we can to dress up the locker room and give it a little bit of love, which we know it needs. As far as a cleanliness standpoint, it is clean and it's cleaned every single day. One of the challenges we've faced is that when we've seen or heard comments, I know there was on one occasion where, we had received a customer service report, and I think within an hour of receiving that report from our secret shopper, not that that's when it had just happened, within that hour, myself, April, Christy, Ethan, and some of our maintenance staff were at the locker room and combing through the place. And we had made a couple of additional visits to observe. And one of the things that we'd observed is that there were occasions that it could be completely spotless, and then within 1 hour of the facility open, just with the number of people going through, the little bits and pieces of paper that, as someone uses a paper towel and their hands are wet, it leaves one little piece and it falls off as they walk. And as they're continuing through, those little pieces fall off. Within 1 hour, it can go from completely clean to completely trashed, or people choose not to flush the toilets or things like that. And so, we have people, and to Ethan's point, we had people going through like so regularly that we were almost like you almost couldn't do more. You would almost have to have someone just constantly walking back and forth throughout. So
See rust, you feel like
It-
it's dirty.
exactly. And I think a big thing for us was the floor was painted, and all that the asphalt, we put the tar, and the tar comes off every year when you seal coat it. And so slowly that works its way into your buildings and it starts to wear into the floor. So we're doing a different application with the floor, which we think will really help a lot more with that appearance. So we are doing a lot of things, and my team's been working very closely with Ethan and his staff. So
I mean, we realize that we know the times that it gets really busy, and we need to have staff go through, and that's when we kind of close it down for about 15 minutes. After camps come through, we definitely want to get somebody going through there because it's a couple hundred kids rolling through there, and they don't like to pick up after themselves all the time. So we know when to close them down after big groups come in. But I think we're doing our best to try and keep up on the issue. And I agree with Terry that just resurfacing the floor, getting a different look in there, getting the rusted things out, like more of a cosmetic feel to it. I think it's going to make it just initially when you walk in, be like, oh my gosh, this is so much cleaner. Then on top of it, I think Matt really has a good handle on what needs to be done on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to make sure that the facility stays clean. So I think we're in a good spot, and we've had really good communication and trying to figure out, when does my aquatic staff need to call the maintenance staff to come in? When can it be just, our aquatic staff going through there and just making sure toilets are flush, so I think that's another part of, just a collaborative effort of making sure everything stays clean. So I think it will be in a better spot.
Yeah, I'd add on to that relative to the fitness center. I don't know what you do about this. I come out of spin class at 11 o'clock. Now, there haven't been kids in the locker room, and there's towels laying around. Come on. Or I got there the other day, and I opened the locker that I was going to use, and there's an empty water bottle in there. Yeah, I don't know.
It's like you need an attendant.
Well, and the attendants do. I mean, if Billy's in there and he finds towels laying around, he picks them up. But it well, I think you're doing what you can. I just think it's regrettable, and it really ticks me off when I find. So I go pick them up. I can't stand that.
Yeah, and that's the thing that we try to tell staff too, as they're coming in, because a lot of our lifeguard staff, they go through locker rooms on their way in too. Just tell us if there's something in there. Go grab a glove, pick it up. Flush a toilet. Do what you can, because it reflects on everybody, not just myself or the maintenance staff. It reflects on you guys for working in a dirty environment. So, we try to impress on them too, to take some ownership in it as well. So I think, just all of us working together, I think it's really going to help.
So I hate to go really far in depth in here, but we're speeding along tonight. Is it that we go through there every hour, and then are we regimented? Like, you go into restrooms at McDonald's or whatever, and they have to
Yeah, you
sign
see 'em
off
sign
every
off on
hour.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously we have the initial cleaning in the morning. And then we have adult lap swim lessons. I think we get somebody else in there right before we open at noon. And then once camps come out at about 2:30ish, 3, we try to close down for about 15 minutes, at least going through the women's locker room. That's the only one we really need to close down because the majority of the staff we have are male. Going through like on the maintenance side and doing a good thorough cleaning on it. They can go through the men's locker room all day long if they want to. But so we're trying to break it down to when we know that we have a large group done coming through, we go in and try and clean it out, and then have another group come through. It's really just trying to get in there after the camps come through because that's just such a large amount of people coming through.
Yeah, but it just takes one thing to really make it really bad.
Yeah, and
so maybe you don't want to wait 3 hours or 2 hours.
well, and that's on. We have lead lifeguards at the pool too, and that's on their checklist of stuff to do to walk through the locker rooms. And if it's a female lead lifeguard, then we grab one of the male lifeguards on break and tell them to go through it, or the manager goes through it. So it's not just put on the park staff and the maintenance staff to always be the ones going through there. It's on our checklist of daily things to do. Every hour they have to at least do some type of walk through there. I mean, we're not, having them hose stuff down and do deep clean, but at least a general pickup, because that's the stuff that people see. It's just the little things laying on the ground. So it is on our, hourly checklist we have staff assigned to it as well.
And I think that our even the secret shopper reports for this year at Centennial, we had what I would say was an increase in positivity. We had at least one of the scores was 100 on that. Most of them, I think, were in the 80s. There was 2 others in the 80s and one that was lower. When we look back at it, we identified that that person had come through right when we opened on one of these stormy days where staff was not able to work on getting all the pool stuff ready because we had thunder and lightning in the area. So they weren't able to be out on the deck working. They did what they, could in the locker rooms, but they had limited time to work on everything. And so all of a sudden we had to open the pool back up and they came right through and we were like kind of in a scramble of, can we even open the facility? So it happens. I mean, and we always want to put our best foot forward, but sometimes you have to weigh out, all right, are we holding everyone off for another half an hour so we can make sure we're, ready for rope drop, or how is this going to work? So
Well, it sounds to me like we can get Commissioner O'Donnell to go to the on a more regular basis. We won't have the problem.
There you go.
He's handling the activity center. Fitness center. That's right. Well, both probably.
We'll take all the help we can get.
Yep, absolutely. So some of our 2020 initiatives that we're gonna have going on here is, I think probably one of the bigger ones is we're increasing the age that a child can enter the facility without an adult from 7 years old to 9 years old. We did I did a survey of pulling information from our surrounding districts, and everyone was between I think 10 and 14 or 10 and 15 years old. So it's a wide range, and I know 7 is, I believe, what IDPH says that you can do. Now we can, and that's just the minimum that they say. So we feel comfortable raising it to 9. It's a little bit older, and we've already started talking with the marketing department on what additional signage we need, decals on the check-in counter so people know. And how we're gonna tell the public, that's going on, because I feel like we might get some pushback on it, but it's a change. So I don't really know how it's going to go until the pool's open and see how we're doing it.
And before they buy the passes too, they need to know that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's just whatever information we can get out and let people know. So we've worked with marketing on that. We are switching over our lifeguard services from Ellis to Starguard, and we're already starting that transition. Last week we did 3 classes there. We have another one coming up this Saturday. We have one on Martin Luther King Day. We have another one the following Sunday, the 26th, to get all of our staff changed over and transitioned over. The nice thing is it's a nice, smooth, easy transition. And and staff seem to be, they're not having any issues with it. So that's good there. Like I said, we're increasing our budget to buy additional chairs at Centennial, locker room renovation, and the last big one is Hinckley Pool. We're moving our camp swim lessons from Hinckley over to Centennial this year, so we have a block of time over at Hinckley. And what are we going to do with it? We're going to offer more adult swim, not senior swim, adult swim. Because I have heard from some people in the community that they want another place, where adults can sit and tread water in deeper water. They can't really do that during open swim over at Centennial. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. we're gonna have adult swim just for them. We're gonna plug in another aqua fitness class from 9 to 10 a.m. on Tuesdays. Thursdays we're gonna have lifeguard training from 8 to 10 a.m. We don't really have the ability to do morning trainings now because we're booked over at Centennial and with swim lessons. So having that 2-hour block will be nice. And then we're going to still have beginning diving on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 to 11 a.m. So we've pulled stuff out, but we're adding a few extra things in. So I'm interested to see how that goes with having the additional adult swim over there, because we always hear that they want more over at Hinckley. So hopefully they'll like that. And then for our 2020 pool schedule, Labor Day is a week later this year, so that's going to be a fun challenge to work on. So like anything, it's all about staffing. Hopefully we're able to have enough staff to get us through. I think we will. And then whatever we do with the fitness center shutdown, if we can coordinate that with our last 2 weeks or last week and a half of the pools being open, so whatever guards would work inside, now we can shift them outside. And we're not trying to keep 2 early morning lap swims open at the same time, because that stretches a lot of people thin, and it makes it a little bit of a challenge. And then if we can have any additional hours at any of the other facilities, we'll continue to evaluate that like we did this past summer, and see if we can or can't. And if we can, great. If we can't, we'll hopefully have another place for people to go to swim. Any questions? Yes.
Well, first I want to compliment you. When I was looking at the survey respondents, it looks like about 300 people got back to you guys for marketing. You had between mid-80s to mid-90s excellent to good ratings across 3 of the big areas that I think of as customer service, staff, and safety. So compliments to you and your staff. I thought that was excellent. The question I had, and refresh me, and Terry, you might also know this better, but the shade came out a couple times. I'm still the old school where you kind of want to get hot and maybe a tan. But if you are there, do we have those sun sails or anything like that? Or what is the thought or strategy you guys have used in design? Or I'm sure you guys have discussed this to some degree. Just want to get your guys' thought on that shade comment, because I think it was a couple different facilities. And I don't know how I bought those sails before.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's something we already do or if it's something that we're still thinking about.
Yeah, we have, there's large shade structures and small shade structures at all the facilities. The ones at Centennial, we have a couple extra ones in around the wading pool that were there originally. They're funbrellas. And then, some of the shade anticipated with that property is trees that, since it was a newer facility, there's still some time for them growing in, which is why we have, other shade structures out there. So it'll continue to increase. I mean, we could always consider or look at additional shade structures if we think that's appropriate, but we do have shade available at all the facilities.
Yeah, umbrella.
Yeah, Hinckley. Yeah, and we have some shade over at Hinckley too. We have some bigger, older, more mature trees. And other than that, I don't know if there's any other space that we can put shade structures in.
Yeah.
The deck butts right up against the fence, so I think we have a fair amount of shade. I think times are changing, right? So people don't want to sit out, and not everyone. I mean, there are still some people that get their corner on the pool deck and sit there for 7 hours. I think it's kind of switching from, you know, I want to get a huge, nice golden brown tan to I don't want, I want shade. I want to make sure I have SPF 50 on. So I think we're gonna see comments on both where people are perfectly fine with how we have it, and then people want more shade. So, can we add more shade? Yeah, maybe. It might be a completely different comment next year too.
Right.
So
But
it's
we do have a shade structure.
yeah, we do.
We repurposed that from Oakton
Yeah,
years
that's
ago.
what I thought.
Mhm.
Yeah, this person said this could use a shade ton as well.
Yeah, and I think everyone wants more of stuff too. So and
More chairs.
we did not have a chair comment at Hinckley though. We had plenty of chairs at Hinckley.
Yeah, the only reason I say it, for those guys who are used to it, at my father's pool, we have it. It's just, they snap up. You've got to have a pretty steady pole or some place to structure because the wind and everything.
Yeah, I mean, the shade structures for the pools, for the bigger ones, they're not cheap, but
Oh, yeah, none of it would be.
no, but we can certainly do it.
Oh, and I'm not even, I look at it, once again, I'll go back to my point, 85,000 people, right, came through. And this is an excellent report relative to our successes last year, despite cooler temperatures. So, there's nothing I'm advocating as much as I think you guys did a great job. But there is something that's more simple, more frugal in mind relative to shade, besides letting that oak tree grow. That's cool too. But that's your budget and different conversation.
And speaking of the budget, I did want to say we are still, staff across the board did a great job of keeping expenses down and sending staff home, and we're tracking to still hopefully hit the budget despite the weather.
You had a couple of complaints also about the temperature of the water here at the splash pad. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, so I think when it's hot from end of June through August, I don't think it's noticeable. When I was out at the splash pad at the end of the season, that's when you start to see the temperatures of the water dip a little bit more overnight because we don't have a heater on it. So that's where during the daytime, people tend to notice the cooler water a little bit more if it's not hot out. And as you go into September, you kind of notice it a little bit more as soon as the wind kicks up a little bit. So I think that's where some of those comments come, is that it's not necessarily, when it's July and 90 degrees out, that water feels phenomenal. But when it's 75, 76 degrees and, the pool, when the water coming out is about the same temperature as the air, that's when you start to notice it a little bit more.
Remember we talked about getting a heater because
Mel did it. I think it was Mel.
And we talked about it too as a staff, and we pulled it. I can't remember how that all.
Yeah, I remember it was about $25,000-$30,000 to include one, but we debated it.
Worth it or not, because we weren't really carrying a lot of it. But that's something we can do, if we in the future, see how.
Yeah, but you may only.
It was cooler summer too.
Yeah, and you may only need it for 3 weeks.
Right.
So, cost wise, is it, $30,000 for 3 weeks?
It's still very crowded. It's just
Yeah. I mean, if it's warm out, people are there, regardless of whether or not they think the water's a little bit cooler or not. People are there.
You could make money in the shoulder season if the water's warmer.
right. So it's something maybe for the future.
Have we contacted Harp and Fiddle about next year?
I have. I'm waiting. Yes, I have contacted Declan. I'm waiting to hear back. Our initial conversation when we wrapped everything up was that he is interested in doing it again next year. So I'm just waiting to see if he has any things within the contract that he worked within this past year. If there's anything that sticks out that he wants to revisit.
That is
so I'm waiting to hear back from him on
fabulous, isn't it? That's great.
He's very positive.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a much better food selection overall. We always, as I look through the comments from the concessions area, you're always going to get ones for more healthier options, more this, more that. But I think we had a very good mix of healthier options with the salads. They offered smoothies. And then you had your tried and true pizza and hot dogs and popcorn nachos. So I think from a variety standpoint, I thought it was great, but it was also a simple menu, so you didn't have 50 things that you're trying to stock and sell. You knew what worked, and I think it just overall went better. And we had a good. I liked working with them too, so I think that was helpful as
He's
well.
very customer focused, which helps a lot. It helps a lot.
He is, and I think he was out there a fair amount too, so I think that also helped.
That's great.
So, yeah.
Yay. I wanted to do this. I didn't count how many times weather was mentioned in your report.
A few is
a lot.
is my guess.
Yeah.
Just a few. Yeah, and who knows, next year if we go and we have a really hot May, those numbers are very possible to go up. So I mean, if you look at May 2018 leading into Memorial Day weekend, we were getting into the mid 80s. I think Memorial Day weekend was 90s. It was hot, and we had a line outside the fitness center of people buying passes over that weekend. So the weather is a huge driver of getting people in, and especially those early pass sales. So if we have a nice May, nice April,
Yeah.
that really helps.
Anybody else have questions, or do you have anything else to say?
No, thank you. It was my first time presenting for you guys, so
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I yield the floor then to Commissioner Leach.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to yield my time back over to Superintendent Wolf for the Buildings and Grounds report.
Thank you. My report's right after the pool report and about halfway through your packet if you're not following along. So there's some pictures that'll catch your eye. So anyway, I do want to let everyone know that Manager Meunier just finished up with getting all the required signatures and everything needed in the park grant application off that we approved last week, or at the last board meeting. So that's been submitted. It'll be FedEx down and will arrive before the due date next week. So happy to report on that. Beyond that, we are moving along, as we mentioned, with the work at the Aquatic Center. The floors were actually already ground down and completed. We jumped on that right away because timing was very important for this. And the partitions are scheduled to be installed the week of the 27th. Yeah, so they're moving along very quickly. And like I said, we're working on the plumbing next. We're kind of working through that project as fast as we can. And we're not thrilled about cold weather, but we're happy because we're hoping that it'll help protect our ice rinks a little bit. This kind of on again, off again, mild weather has really been a challenge for us this year, to say the least. It's not really costing us, as you can see, a lot and as far as dollars, but we're spending a lot of staff time out there, just continuously monitoring. We have people going out there multiple times a day just to keep an eye on things and take a look at it. We're redirecting our park ambassadors at night to take extra stops and spend their time out there just to make sure that people aren't trying to damage and destroy those areas. So it's definitely been a bit of a challenge, but it comes with these facilities, and we still think it's definitely worthwhile overall. It's just created a little different situation for us that we would normally have if we were just putting it on the grass, because it just would be grass out there. But beyond that, we'll probably be open for skating, we think, on probably Monday based on the current forecast. So although we see the temperatures are going to creep right back up into the upper 30s by the end of next week. So it might be a short-lived thing. So if you see the green flag, grab your skates, get out there quick. But I'd be happy to answer any other questions about anything in my report.
First thing I want to compliment you, I think if I looked at the report, Christy got an award.
Yes, she did.
Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. So Midwest Institute of Park Executives is a group of similar people like myself, superintendents and managers, and some executive directors, and that all deal with park maintenance generally. And she was nominated and received an award. It's an award that isn't even offered or given out every year. In fact, it hasn't been given since 2014. And in the 83-year history of the organization, she's the first female to ever receive the award. So, yeah, and it has to do with all the work that she did for the transition of not only natural lawn care, but the things that she did this year with taking on the new role so well with regard to the building maintenance aspect. She should really be commended and complimented for some of the work that we were seeing expenses growing in areas of both overtime and cost for products. And now we've seen those turned around completely, and not only at or but even lower than what they were previously, which is really commendable for someone that's just coming in to an area that they really had no background in. So she's done a wonderful job. So it was for those reasons that she was given that award.
Awesome.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up.
That's on my regards to that and compliments.
I will.
That's well earned.
Thank you.
Anybody questions, comments for Superintendent Wolf before he goes on to the next piece?
Yes.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
So this is disturbing, this vandalism that you have at South Park. So do we have cameras there? Are we able to spot any of this, do anything about it?
You know, we do have some seasonal cameras that we put up there. They are wireless, and so they're a little bit glitchy, and we've seen some things, but not others. And I know Christy's working very closely with the IT staff to work through these things and bringing this to the attention of the police when applicable. We haven't gotten anything of substance yet, but we continue to keep a look at that whenever we have something that comes up.
Disgusting. I mean, that's just,
It is. It's frustrating and disturbing. And I know Christie's, had some conversations with people in other communities, and one of the there don't normally see this because most other communities have fencing completely around there, so they're able to just close it off. It's not as easy for people to walk around, but we had that discussion and made a decision when we put this in and got this, and we're fine for now, but we want to continue to keep an eye on that and see if that gets to a point where, well, maybe we need to consider that, but we're not there yet as a recommendation, so.
Other comments, questions?
Mhm.
You know what, I wasn't gonna comment, but I think I will. So I had this idea in the back of my head, and I think I talked to Terry yesterday about it. If you put these rings on the driving range property in the winter, then you could fence that. It's already fenced off. You'd be able to lock them up at night, and it would be at the area where people go to skate anyway. And then it isn't so. And as I understand it, these rings do some damage to the grass that's underneath it, which doesn't make any. Well, I don't think makes a big difference on the driving range because that's just where the balls are landing. So it's just a thought that I had that maybe if this continues to be a problem, that could be something that you could look at. You may have to do some reconfiguring of, there's not a warming house there or anything, so I don't know how that works.
Yeah, after we had that brief discussion last night, the only other thing that came to my mind beyond the warming house that we need to work our way through and figure out, which I think is doable, is we have irrigation in the ground at the driving range as well. So, and those have stakes that get driven. So, but again, we could identify where the lines are. So
It was just a thought, but I'm not even.
sure, yeah, I think it's open for a discussion amongst myself and rec staff to see if it's something that could work. So.
Seeing no more questions or discussion, I guess I have a motion on, we're going to approve a Hinkley Park Master Plan Agreement. Before we go for the motion, do we want to talk about it or wait till discussion in the motion? Go ahead in the motion. Then I move to approve the agreement with Upland Design Limited in an amount not to exceed $39,594 for the landscape architecture design and construction administration services at Hinkley Park, and authorize the executive director to execute and deliver such an agreement. Second, open for discussion now. Go ahead, Terry.
I do have a memo prepared. This, similar to other times when we engage or bring on new architects or certain services, we went through a request for qualifications process where we identified what our needs were and advertised it and had it open. We did go through it. As Jennifer mentions, we had 10 submittals. We went through 10 submittals, narrowed it down to our top two. They were very clearly two, and we couldn't come up with a clearly definable third. And so we thought, well, let's start with the two. And we were very happy with Upland Design and their success rate with grant applications and their approach to that. It seemed to fit really well in line with how we would anticipate moving forward with projects of this scope and size, especially with Hinckley Park. So they're well known and established within our industry and have done a lot of great projects and came with very high recommendations for everyone that's worked with them. So with that, we're proposing that we work with them for the Hinckley Master Plan project with the idea that we would intend to apply for an OSLAD grant for that project, should those OSLAD grants be made available this year again.
Questions, comments? Go ahead.
I just had one comment. Thank you for preparing the memo. One of the things that really stood out to me was when it said their projects come in on time and on budget. I mean, to me, that's really, like, if they have a reputation for that, that's a pretty solid thing to be saying about them.
Yep.
I can see why they stood out to you.
Yes.
The only thing I wanted to bring up, and I know I wasn't there at the special, I think it was a special meeting yesterday, but in this, just refresh me on the OSLAD grant process against the timeline, because to me, we're spending $40,000 in more professional fees, but I want to kind of know where we last left off, our next steps for approvals, going for a referendum, things like that. So how far are we going deeper into the professional fees category? Not that we don't have to, but versus we I think last night we're working through a lot of the work to get to the right answer, right, for this project.
This is Hinckley.
Oh.
This is Hinckley, yeah.
I misread it?
Yep, that's okay. It's for Hinckley.
Oh, good. So this is for the baseball lights,
Yes.
all that stuff, that project.
Shelter.
Totally different.
Yep, all the different things, pathways,
Perfect.
everything in Hinckley Park.
So this is for the one,
Yeah.
so this is the budget process that we also then talked about. And what did we decide on the budget capital process?
For Hinckley?
Yes.
It's in next year. It's in 2021.
Yep.
And what's in there is lighting. What?
Yeah, we have a dollar amount for planning this
Plans.
year, to Sandra's point.
This
but-
year we have a
For this,
amount
for
planning
this and
and the cost for the project are in 2021.
the construction basically would be more
Exactly.
2021.
Yes.
So we want to
Thank
get
you.
ahead of it, so we have somebody on board and we're ready to go for the grant. If it does come out in July, is about usually when they come out.
Yep.
And then construction can start, they can start, doing all their work.
Yeah, so always a big component with a grant application is making sure you have a public process in advance. And so what we're engaging them to do is to help us with engaging the community and having a few public meetings, also staff meetings, talking about what the needs are out there. We anticipate working with the major affiliate group users out there. We already have some understanding and ideas that there's a picnic shelter area that we've worked with specifically with both baseball and football on a location and pathways. And so those are the sort of things that we're going to work our way through now, get ourselves ready for that. We have, there's a preliminary date posted on IDNR that suggests that grant applications for OSLAD will be due on July 1st. And so we're going with that. That can shift. It's not official yet, but that's what they've got posted. And so, we want to make sure we get through all those processes and have them come up with a good concept plan that meets the needs of our community and your constituents so that we have a good solid plan to go for when the OSLAD grant becomes available. To Gail's point, we have the money to construct all those assets that we talked about with that plan, identified and budgeted for in 2021. That'll, of course, come to the board for approval during budget process this year, but we've put in some identifiers for that. We'll get through this process to the point where we can clean up those numbers, whether it's maybe we can sharpen it down a little bit. Well, maybe we need a little bit more, but we can get through all that now, and we'll be ready to go for bidding next year in like late December, January, which is a premium time to be bidding projects such as that, start construction in 2021 and have everything wrapped up towards the end of the year. So as we're moving forward, some of the discussions we'll have to have are with the affiliates about, hey, schedule for next year, how does this look? What can we do so that we can get you guys these upgrades? And this includes and anticipates putting in some sort of under drainage and replacing the irrigation there so that hopefully the football and baseball fields, diamonds 1 and 2, will be a lot more playable. So
And just to recall, thank you, we're on the right project. The pathways, this also is going to help us with some ADA issues and stuff. So
Absolutely.
go back and forth between the fields, right?
absolutely.
Perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions, discussions for Terry? Commissioner?
I know there are other issues involved in the selection process, but how did the quotes on this price-wise?
So the way that this process works out is that we're required to identify our top at least 3 firms that we would like to work with. Then we have to enter into negotiations with the top one to see if we can reach an agreeable point on price before we can look at pricing for some of the other ones. We're not allowed to look at price as part of our determination, but we have to look clearly at qualifications. Is that accurate?
100% true.
Thank you.
They take, you can't consider the price component
Okay.
in the local government selection process for design professionals. It's kind of strange.
Yeah. So, but for this, we look at, what have we had for similar type projects and expenses. In addition, every architect has their rate sheet, and it talks about what all the different people in the organization are paid per hour, and that's what you can really look at to kind of base it. I keep a file of those. I've asked some of my colleagues for those, and we're familiar with the ones that we work with on the other ones. I can tell you that there's some in the neighborhood of $40 an hour cheaper at the high end for their principal landscape architects. So I'm very comfortable that this is within reason. And when we first got the proposal, we felt that it was a very good proposal. So.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments, questions? Seeing none. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnel?
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne?
Aye.
Commissioner Grau?
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc?
Yes.
Commissioner Leach?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington?
So the next thing we have up in front of us is another motion relative to equipment purchase request. So I therefore move to approve the purchase and delivery of one Toro 4010D 4-wheel drive 11-foot mower in the amount of $71,934.81. The mower will be purchased under the State of Illinois Joint Purchasing Contract number 401813 through MTI Distributing and locally distributed by Reindeers in Mundelein, Illinois, as Toro's Northern Illinois regional representative. Do I have a second? Second. Open for discussion, and I'll first turn it over to Superintendent Wolf.
Thank you. In your board packet, there's a memo following along. There's a picture of the existing mower. This is the mower we had talked about during the budget process. This has been a very difficult mower for us and is often down. This is one of the ones that we would use to cut our large athletic fields. And part of the reason that we can keep our fields in such good shape and we're able to keep down all the weed pressure is because we have these large mowers that are able to go out and mow them. We're mowing at most of our athletic fields at least 2 times a week, in some locations up to 3 times a week. And that's a huge component of our ability to go with a more natural approach. So for us to have this mower just not working for us and down for such great periods of time causes a big strain on us. And it's just become a burden for us, which is why we requested the budget for this year.
Commissioner?
Is it built for this type of?
It is. This was a couple of years back. We had decided to try a different mowing manufacturer. We had always had Toros before, which Toros are what you'll see primarily on most golf courses, things like that. They've got a lot of really good products, but we had decided to try Jacobson, and we have just not been overall impressed with it. So
I just can't believe a lawnmower costs $71,000.
yeah, they're big, expensive.
I hope it lasts a long time.
Yeah, I mean, we would expect it to last 7 to 10 years. So I would expect to get that out of the Toro, if not more. So.
Other questions? Discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tuttle,
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne, Commissioner Grau,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell, Commissioner Harrington.
And our final motion, which also involves approval of what is, I guess, a vehicle purchase request. I therefore move to approve the purchase and delivery of one T350 Ford dump truck in the amount of $43,833, and the vehicle will be purchased through a joint purchasing agreement with Suburban Purchasing Cooperative from Curry Motors Fleet in Frankfort, Illinois, under contract number 184. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you. Open discussion. Superintendent Wolf.
The next memo is, again, a memo about this vehicle. This was one that we had identified as in poor shape. It's quite old vehicle. It's got a lot of rust, and one that we depend on to get all of our work done. So we had budgeted for it and talked about it during the capital budget process, and we're just requesting to move forward with that purchase.
Any questions or discussion with the commissioners? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Coyne, Commissioner Grau,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tuttle,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington.
I give the chair back to, I guess, Commissioner Grau.
All right, moving on to policy. So we have the investment policy under A and B here. Last month, we passed a change to the investment policy. Is that what the review amendment was, or are these both the same?
No, so the board approved a change to the investment policy at the last board meeting to comply with the Illinois Sustainability Act. And as part of that, we had Commissioner O'Donnell had raised some issues. So these proposed revisions are to address the points that he raised. One of which was that we did.
I can make the motion.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I just didn't know what the difference between A and B was on here. So there's they both reference the same policy.
I think it's one is to review it and one's to approve it.
Okay, then go ahead.
Okay, so then we review it first. Sorry. I'm sorry I didn't look at the agenda closely. So,
All right, continue. I'm sorry.
so the second page of the policy that has marked revisions under diversification is where I addressed Commissioner O'Donnell's comments about having some limit on the term at which we could invest. So I looked at the GFOA's sample investment policy and added some language from there. And then they had suggested 5 years. Since I've been here, the longest we've invested has been 2 years. I like the policy to be broad enough so that we're flexible and, different interest rate environments where we may want to have a longer term. So I suggested 3 years, but I'm open, to. Okay. So, and then the second revision was to clean up our reporting language to better reflect our actual practice. If anyone has any questions or comments, or let's discuss if we should make any tweaks.
The changes that you made address the comments that I made at the last meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll make the motion. I move to approve the amendment to the investment policy 3.185 of the Administrative Policy Manual as presented.
Second.
Any questions, concerns, comments? All right, call the vote.
Commissioner Grau,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tuttle,
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrington.
Okay, and then the conduct ordinance follows. That's a long one. everybody's flipping.
It follows investment policy.
There you go, yes. I move to approve amendments to the conduct ordinance number 18-3 as presented.
Second.
Okay. You want to take that?
Yeah, I'm gonna take it, and the attorney's gonna help me jump in. So if you remember, we had updated our ordinance, conduct ordinance in the last, I can't remember, last year or so. And one of the manuals we were updating, we had asked, Ansel Glink, when they were hired, to review our policies, and this is the first one, that we looked at, plus the fact that there are new laws that went into effect, as of January 1 and February 1 of this year. So that is the changes are a reflection of that. The very first one is, on page, well, it says page 4 on my packet. I'm
They're
not sure why.
individually, yeah, it's good.
Because of page 4, yeah. So this one has to do with neither, this is a cleanup, of our current policy. And I learned something because it's our district property. This has to do really, with drone, when they changed to the drones, about flying things over our property. That the district property includes the first 200 feet above ground level. So that's what we're responsible for, and then it goes to the FAA, correct?
Yes. The FAA still has jurisdiction over drones, but the district property, we want to define that as that 200 feet because you have a right to do that.
We have a right to,
You have jurisdiction.
jurisdiction over the first 200 feet. So that was something new to me. The next change, any questions on that?
Yeah. So on this one, I could see there potentially being a conflict, and I just want to understand how we'd resolve the conflict. So, it's probably the security officer on duty, but in sporting events, this has taken on its own new life. And, yes, and because of the cameras on them and things like that, and you see them at a lot of sports.
Do we see them at our parks still?
Yeah. Oh, they're at our parks. So that's why it becomes more curious to me, how, in essence, we're going to handle this when a visiting team, for instance, comes to town. Up goes one of these little drones, I think we'll just want to, if nothing else, communicate to the affiliates and the relevant affiliate meetings that this is a new issue, and we are now forbidding it, I believe, without permission. I think that's what you've added.
Is that what we did?
I would say that it currently is forbidden, but
Right.
unaware to me that they were being used. So
Yeah, well, it's because they just go up, right? So you don't even know who's driving them.
I get it.
So
You're right.
right, and
It introduces this whole new realm.
right, it's a new realm, and they're using it, and at least I know from the football affiliate, we do not allow them. So we have that rule as an affiliate.
Right.
So it coincides with the park district's rule.
So that's,
But the challenge could be, whether it be baseball, soccer, anybody, it's becoming a competitive use.
okay.
They are going up there to scout, in essence, or get tape. And so it was just an interesting thing. So I just find this an interesting point. I did not know we had this. So.
Right. And it's a good point that you make about letting the affiliates know, because we did, that's something in our new guidelines that we have to let them know anytime we update any policy that would affect them. So.
Yeah, and if I could just chime in, this is something that's near and dear to Dirk Price's heart. So let me go back to him to not in the, I hadn't heard of it in the sports thing, but we're getting a lot of questions over pools and that kind of stuff. So, and it being just, people don't want that. So let me talk to Dirk, and we'll talk some more about that in the future. Dirk will update you on.
Okay, great.
They have them at the fireworks too.
Yes.
That's been it. Yeah.
It's one of those things, right? It's a new thing, and how do you monitor?
And how do you find the owner?
Yeah, you have to find the owner.
That's what I mean. We've never found an
Shoot
owner.
it down.
Right. So you mean, yeah, it has to be something.
They're in the street in a parked car.
blocks away.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We have no idea where they are. We just see it.
They can just control it on their phones.
Yeah, it's like, how do you get it down? You can't just remove it from the park.
You shoot it.
Well, that's what I wanted to caution Commissioner Leach about.
Shooting it down.
Just because it's forbidden doesn't
No,
give you
because
the authority.
there's no weapons on the park. Okay, on page 6, the next page, we'll move along. It's another interesting one that was brought to my attention, that section that we're not winning, there's a lot of cases that have been going on about this, and we're not winning these cases.
Right.
So they were just trying to remove it to be preemptive of that,
Yeah,
correct?
it's a First Amendment issue. It's time, place, and manner restriction, which is something that you have to guard against. And Springfield is losing over and over again in court on this exact issue. So we just want to take it out so we don't have something unconstitutional.
Any questions? On the next page, 7, we added under 2.07B, district property constitutes a limited public forum. Accordingly, this is dealing with soliciting contributions for charitable, religious, political, or nonprofit organizations permitted on district property, providing that a permit therefore has been first obtained from the district in accordance with Chapter 5 of this ordinance. So this deals with the fact that we have, as a park district, what's called limited public forum. Does not mean, and the attorney's going to correct me if I got this wrong, but it does not mean we can't have, people can still have rallies and things like that. But if there is a opposing group that comes on the property, then we can take action.
Yep.
And then we can also this also gives us the designation to, we can tell them, oh, you can have a rally, but we can dictate where in the park, right? You have to be in this part of the park, or you have to be in this,
Right.
specific park.
Yeah, it gives you more authority as opposed to a traditional public forum like Daily Plaza, where they just they get a permit and they just assemble. Here, this gives you some more control of your park in heads off challenges if something was to be denied, or you to limit the size or that kind of thing. So this is a good thing, and again, a First Amendment issue that we're ahead of the game by doing this.
Any questions? On the next page is where we start with all the changes with the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. That's where the changes were incorporated here. You remember we dealt with this last month with the employee manual, and now this is incorporating that language for the new law in C. And then the E is just to point out to you that that individuals can possess cannabis-related paraphernalia, but they cannot possess drug-related paraphernalia in the parks. So that language was also incorporated in that. Anybody have a question?
Outstanding.
You cannot utilize
it.
I'm fine with that.
Park.
That was my
You
point
can
at the last
possess-
meeting. I'm fine as long as you can have what you've stated.
Going on to the next page, another interesting topic, page 12. So, did we pass out the new copies?
That's,
No, I know that's the 2.28, but did you pass out the new?
no, I didn't.
Okay.
I
we'll
was
do it
waiting
while
for you
we'll
to.
wait. Okay.
I can take one too.
This one is stating, it's identifying persons with this different specific gender identity in terms of loitering. So maybe you want to explain that language, that's just not a law, that we have to add that?
Yeah, the Department of Human Rights says, well, first, the legislature amended the Human Rights Act to include gender identity as something you can't discriminate against. The Illinois Human Rights Commission has taken the position that prohibiting somebody who identifies a certain gender from using a facility of the gender that they identify with is a violation of the Human Rights Act. So this goes back to the Palatine School District that you've seen a lot of stuff about in the news and in the paper. So we just have to come into compliance with the current regulations from the Human Rights Commission. So that's why we're recommending this change.
Yes.
Executive Director Marquez and I discussed this earlier today. I want to be 100% clear on this, that our state government has passed a law that says that a biological male can say, I identify as a female, and walk into the women's locker room in our fitness center. Is that correct?
Not exactly. the Human Rights Act, they passed a law that prohibits discrimination against somebody for gender, based on gender identity. And the Human Rights Commission, which interprets that act and is appointed by the governor and with the consent of the legislature, has said, it has issued rulings, 2 or 3 rulings in the past 6 months or so that have said exactly what you said, that it's a discrimination based on gender identity if you prohibit someone from going into the washroom or locker room facility of the gender that they identify with. So gender identity is now the term of art as opposed to sex or just gender. It's what you say you're identifying
So
as.
you identify as.
If you say I identify as,
I
so
get that. So
I-
when the event happens that I just described
Right.
in our fitness center and we have an outcry and a big problem, have you given any thought to how we're going to handle that?
We're going to address that and say it's the law. I mean,
it's happened.
it's happening.
It's happened.
Happening.
It happened this week. It happened earlier this week at a large facility, a large park district with a fitness center that's very close to you that we had to deal with and the situation's going to come up. You're going to have a fitness center attendant who's going to find out about this, and what are they going to do? They're going to have to go to their supervisors. We're going to have some supervisor training here. In the case that happened earlier this week, the person who came into the locker room said, I identify as female, and was actually accosted by other patrons and said, get out of here. And that's how it happened. And it wasn't pleasant. But this person knew their rights, and under the interpretation that the Human Rights Act or the Human Rights Commission has put out, and they said, this is where I'm going to be. And it's something that we'll keep talking with you guys about, and hopefully get through.
It's along the lines as the commissioner just referenced. Is there something, because I'm very neutral on this point, but I do believe, as people have heard in this chamber before, and a lot of transparency. Is there a way to do some type of notification, like a notification that we are conforming underneath this law in the case of these situations? So if it's public addressed, that in essence it would help the staff, maybe
Right.
the public, relative to the why we are conforming with the law. Versus they are
reactive versus.
well, yeah, or you got
proactive.
maybe the situation described by counselor was
Yeah.
People taking it into their own hands, which could be far worse.
Right.
So
I think it's probably a good idea.
it doesn't have to be broad. I don't think you have to make it a billboard. Yeah.
Right. And this just came out of the last legislative session.
And it's just kind of sped up and
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
But
We
I
didn't
think
even talk about this at our, I don't remember hearing about this at our legislative
Just the signage is what I remember.
in November.
There was signage.
We talked about the signage.
that was for single sex.
That was different.
That was
Oh, yeah, it was different. But,
Yeah,
I
'cause
mean,
we're having to look at all our signage as well.
related, but
But this
I
is
don't remember this whole.
this really has kind of
This
picked
came
up, and you're also going to have the underlying fear is that there's going to be a test case that somebody's going to say,
Yeah.
we're going to go and see what happens, and then
Right.
next thing you know, you're on the news, and
I'm not trying to ask for consent. I'm
No,
just trying to ask for deliberation
Yeah,
to
and
think about
Mhm.
how to disclose it more than it comes into potentially management. But I love the idea of just like when you would say post no smoking, right, to a certain degree. You're just saying not here. In this case, you're saying it the opposite. You're saying, hey, this is going to be allowed here because it's the law. And you're not promoting, or you're taking a neutral position.
Right.
But if someone's there and they're opposed to it for whatever reasons, you want it.
Everybody might not be aware.
I don't think
this new
anyone's
law.
aware of it. I mean, besides a very small handful of people.
When did this go into effect? Was it January,
it
February?
actually started kind of in the summer, but then it's really and I misspoke because I spent some time
Okay.
looking after we talked.
Okay,
It,
that's
it,
right.
it's kind of picked up steam through
Okay.
the fall and
Yeah.
now
Okay.
now's where it's happening.
Well, it's a little bit of a touchy subject, and I understand, so try not to read anything into my comments. I'm just curious about how the law works. So the Human Rights Commission
Yes.
established this guideline,
Precedent.
a precedent, which is the law of Illinois unless tested. So theoretically, hypothetically, we could leave the wording the way it was and decide to fight that because that's not a court. That's not the Supreme Court or of the state of Illinois or anybody else.
The
And
United
I'm
States,
getting,
United States Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit, which covers Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana, I think only, took a case out of Wisconsin on this exact same issue and ruled in favor of the student who wanted to use the other washroom in 2018. That doesn't bind us necessarily because it didn't come out of the Chicago courts, but the thinking is if the Chicago courts would follow the Seventh Circuit out of Wisconsin, and we'd be bound by that same precedent.
Right. And I,
there's that too.
right.
That's
I
kicking
don't
out there.
want the Park Ridge Park District to be holding a placard for either side on this. What I want, what I want is to make sure that the public knows that it's we're being
Abiding by the
we're complying with the law with this and without bias either way.
Right.
That we don't have to make a political statement or take
No,
a position
right,
on it.
an
We're
opinion on it
an
either
opinion
way,
on it.
right.
We are complying
Following
with
the
the
law.
state law. So
Yeah.
that's what I
So
want to make sure.
when we make
You don't have to
this,
raise your hand. You're the chair.
sorry, you're the chair.
Oh, yeah, I am. No, I just wanted to say, I understand what you're saying. I hope we just don't say it's an invitation to, do whatever you want today. It's switch the restroom day. We have to, we need to couch it in such a way it doesn't encourage people to challenge.
I think we can work out
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
wording with the
We
attorneys.
do, and I think we're trying to come up with like a checklist for staff and some other things to try and
training and
so we're trying, and unfortunately, everybody's going to be dealing with this in the coming year, more so than they have been in the past.
The only thing I just want to catch, if I can, is the timeline for this whole process, maybe included in what we're reviewing right now. So when would we know kind of your recommendations back to if we do some type of a transparent, unbiased, unprejudiced,
We'll get back to you real soon.
like in the next meeting?
We'll shoot for that. We also have a conference next week, so we've got a lot of folks that are speaking, but and also doing their presentations that were due 2 weeks ago. But we'll do our best.
maybe
to
by
get
the
back to you.
second meeting of
We'll
February.
shoot for
That's
next
fine.
meeting.
Yeah.
I just want to in my head know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because once this gets out in the public domain, like I said, most people besides I think a handful would not be aware of this.
Sure.
Once it does happen, maybe to Commissioner Grau's point, if it becomes more tested, more readily understood, I just want us to be pretty proactive relative to putting our staff reactively in a weird, unusual situation to enforce in today's climate. We just do not necessarily know how best to enforce this, and especially at different age levels and different level of training.
And that's a big part.
Okay.
So I'll see what we
Perfect.
can get as soon as we can get it back to you, but no later than the second meeting.
Second meeting in February.
Yeah.
Great.
We'll try to be quicker.
Yeah, I understand. Maybe this topic will come up at conference.
I think it will.
Okay, so we are now on to page, the next page, doesn't have a number.
Just section 228, right?
Thank you, 228 deals with the same,
Did you pass out that?
oh, I did not. Did we pass out?
No, I didn't know that was.
Yep, I apologize.
No.
So since this was, we had a question from Commissioner Grau on this, and she brought up a really good point. And so Attorney Puma had done some revisions
think what the point was that it seemed to prohibit folks, anybody from going into the washroom. And it took me a minute to read it that way, but I understand. So, and so we talked about it. So what I tried to do is to create two different clauses that said, that allowed, that dealt with that issue so that it read more clearly, and maybe it doesn't, but it at least says ultimately that you have to have your gender you go to where the washroom of your gender identity.
So wherever you identify, that's the washroom.
Yeah, it just said you couldn't go in.
Yeah.
Then you were prohibited.
From
I got where you
This
came
is
from
more
with
clear.
yours.
Yeah. So good job, Cindy.
Yeah, I got where you're coming
It's
from.
like you can't
now,
go to the
now no one can go.
No
one
one.
can go.
Right.
I got it.
Does that make
Whatever. It's all so convoluted, right? I mean,
sense? Any questions on that?
people do things different ways.
So is the recommendation to take Commissioner Grouse
No,
versus
I didn't.
No,
Attorney,
the attorneys? But this,
The new one. The
red
amended.
one.
whoever was the author.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
So we'll say as amended.
Perfect.
Okay. And then the very last one is on page, was labeled as page 17, and that language was deleted because it was redundant to language that was earlier on in the policy. It was in 2 point.
Where was it? Oh, 2.20 at the very
We just
end.
talked about
Yeah,
it.
where it was
We
under,
just talked about it.
where it's under 4 years of age
Yeah.
at 2.20, and so
Yeah.
it's
So it was a redundant language. so
And
that was
just
closed.
as a point on that, I talked to Gail about that. I thought 4 was kind of a random number, kind of young, but that was already in our
Right.
ordinance.
Yeah, so we
So-
talked about it as well, and it's, it's not a law. The 4-year-old is not the law, but it seemed like at an appropriate age. We had that in before, and Attorney Puma also said that he's seen that language in other park districts.
I was looking at one another
So
contract
unless it
so it
comes-
was the same.
4, yeah.
Man.
It's up to you though.
Yeah, it's up to us if we want to change
Do you think
that.
4 should be the cutoff to go into the opposite sex restroom?
Well, one of the things that makes it easier is, in places like the Centennial Fitness Center, you have the family
locker room.
Right.
Mhm.
restrooms, which I like to use with my kids, and when my husband takes them to swimming, he likes to use them. And also, in the park, it's, kind of like a single, so you could bring in like
Yeah.
a 5-year-old boy into the woman's because it's like one
me.
stall. So there are
Options.
options that probably weren't around 15, 20 years
Right.
ago, but that are a lot more prevalent.
When my kids were 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the last change on that. So.
All right. Any questions about any of those other than what we already discussed?
The only thing I'll point out in 17, section 2.30C, and I get it, it's been there, but you basically are saying you're not allowed to use a phone at all in your locker rooms or restrooms or whatever.
Right.
Okay. I don't think that's going to prevent anyone from doing it, which I'm sure frequently happens. But I just want to make sure everybody understands it's a rule that we're put in place that likely won't be followed tomorrow. That's all.
I think it was already there.
It was
Well,
already
I
there.
no, I can see that. It's just
Rob, as we've talked about, Commissioner Leach, that a lot of these
I'm fine
things,
with either.
a lot of these things, it gives us the backbone if there's an
I get
issue
it.
that occurs, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean.
But a lot of people are checking their emails.
We're not checking every day, right?
Yeah.
We could never.
Only thing I'm suggesting is while you're opening this up, the narrowing of the use
Right.
is maybe helpful versus the prohibited
Uh-huh.
prohibition of a use because people are going to check their text and emails. They're every day.
The problem is taking pictures, right?
Of course, that's
Well,
what I'm saying.
That's what he's saying. That's what it should say,
But if
not you. not
Yeah,
you can't
but
go there.
everyone checks their cell, text, and email as soon as you get back to your locker. In my opinion, and I should say every 50% of the people probably do.
So I just toss in there, and I have no expert opinion on this. Just the reason that I would want to keep the rule like it is so that if somebody suspects, if a
Does it
district
film?
employee suspects that they're using the camera, they can, if under a new interpretation, they would have to say, "Are you using the camera?" And they'd say, "No, I'm not using the camera." And then you couldn't do anything because they could just say, "I'm checking my email." Here you can say, "Well, you can't use your phone at all under that suspicion." So yes, I agree that, on the rare occasion that I'm actually going to a gym and going to use the locker room, I would probably check my email when I got back to my locker. And I would probably be irritated if a park district employee said you can't. But I would rather have them have the discretion to be able to protect the privacy of everybody else by saying, look, that person, the park district employee is a reasonable person. They can see you're checking your email. They might think that somebody's using the camera instead, taking a film, taking a video, and this gives them the authority to say you're not allowed to use the phone, and right. So I'm usually not in favor of having laws with selective enforcement, but I think it becomes a difficult task to monitor who's using their camera and who's just checking their email.
And I think if, to that point, and if you read through a lot of this, that would be the case, right? We're not, these are here a lot of times for a protection for the case that there's a big issue.
Right.
Right? Because
I would think so.
we could never have the staff go around.
No.
Right?
We got water
We would
bottles
have
and
a staff
lockers.
in
You
every
can't even keep the
We got towels on the floor.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. So we would have a staff in every single
Right.
cranny of our
No,
parks and
that's
our
fine.
facilities. So it's like when something happens and it elevates to a big issue.
That's what you're going to say.
Then we have something to fall back on, just like it is for, removing people from the parks, right? When they've done some, or disciplinary, action, and when we have to kick people out, and that happens.
Before I turn over to the commissioner to my left, only thing I'm going to say on this point, because I brought it up, is the way I always understood law, and I defer, of course, to the counselor, is when you have these type of stipulations, you can kind of get a double-edged sword when you don't enforce them. So sometimes if they're stated but not enforced, and then you kind of pull it out for your one time, and someone says, well, they do it every day. That's not my business. I'm just, as a commissioner, just saying it's what it is, right? It's just the phone is becoming attached to all of us to listen to music, to do a lot of other things that it's just hit on. And for that matter, I don't really, it's not a big issue.
Well, on this, I think on this one, it needs to be there if for no other reason that it's, speaking again for the fitness center, it's consistent with your signage.
Right.
There's a signage outside the locker room door that very specifically says this.
Okay.
And quite frankly, I think as a result of it being there, again, my observation would be the compliance with it is pretty good. People, when they need to use it, they do it out in the lobby. They don't do it in the locker. That would be my observation. So this I don't have a problem with. In terms of voting for this policy, I am just so on the other side of this that I'm voting no. For the adoption of this, I think it should be challenged. I think that the consequences, we're going to empty out our women's locker room in the fitness center when this event happens, and as it should be. And this is unconscionable to me. So it really upsets me.
Laws.
Great law. That's just wonderful. It's out of control.
Anybody else? Are we ready to vote? Excellent. Can you call the vote? Sure. Oh, as amended. Do I have to say it again, or just, we're voting on the, as amended?
This is terrible.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes. Okay. We're done with policy. Intergovernmental. Oh, I'm I'm sorry. I keep I crossed it off. I'm sorry. We have that one little, we did this last month, but we have to add to it the approval of resolution number 20-1. I move to approve resolution 20-1, a resolution amending the district's sexual harassment policy to add an annual training requirement and adopting a policy for handling complaints of sexual harassment made by one elected official against another elected official. Can I have a second?
Second.
So this is in compliance with the Illinois Workplace Transparency Act that I brought up, I believe, at the last one of the last meetings, and we are required by law. This goes into effect in February. A resolution amending the district's harassment policy, and the training. I just found and the annual training requirement is for employees. That the employees have to go through an annual training, and it says provided by the Illinois Department of Human Rights, which that training is not developed yet. But of course, once it's developed, we will comply with that. And our employees went through a training. Our full-time employees went through a PADERMA training on this in November. But this now will apply to all employees. So we'll be working that into our trainings for all of our staff. And then in terms of elected officials, there's a sentence that says Park Board of Commissioners should also complete this training as a best practice given the new reporting requirements. So it is not a requirement that you have to go through the training that you're required to, but it's saying you should also complete it. So that's the language that is in the Exhibit A under the training. And then in terms of the reporting, that's the other part of this, what this resolution speaks to, the elected officials, and there's a reporting process if there's a complaint against one official against another official. And it goes to the board president, and then there's, all the things that you need to report about, any kind of information you may have about the alleged harassment, and then the legal counsel would appoint a qualified independent attorney or consultant to review, investigate all allegations. So these would be, Exhibit A would be incorporated into our policies as appropriate. So by approving that, you're approving us to put this in our policies, the commissioner policy and the employee policy, and then the resolution is required by law. Any questions?
I just had one quick question. In terms of the administration, I know that the state requires all employees to take an annual ethics training, but it's an online program. Have they given any indication if this would be something similar?
We're hoping so. Our HR manager is working with Ansel Glank, another attorney at the firm, and PADERMA on this. And everybody's trying to figure out, right, with the requirements, but it is something we discussed today that we're hoping, like the ethics training, there'll be an option for. We'll do it at the all staff trainings. We have big trainings, but then if they miss those, we maybe do it as part of onboarding. It was probably what we would do, but then we would catch the current employees and say maybe it's a video or something they have to watch, and they have to sign something that they sign off that they've been through the training. So to come, yeah. So we're not sure yet.
Anything else? Okay, we'll call the question.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tuttle, Commissioner Coyne,
Aye.
Commissioner Grau,
Aye.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington.
Okay, we're done with that. Do we have anything for intergovernmental? to
Nope.
report?
I mean, I have nothing to report to the chair this time.
Communications and correspondence, we have something.
We do. We have a wonderful letter from PADERMA, and Ethan, good timing that you're here. But we received for the fall season, we received our 100% reimbursement because the weighted score was 100% on the audits for the fall. So that's a big deal, and we get money back based on the scoring for this. So congratulations for that.
All right. Does anyone have new business? New business? I move to adjourn the meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners. All in favor? Any opposed?